Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's expert session. And it's a real privilege to bring you to this conversation. I'm very excited about what's ahead. But before we dive in, I just want to extend my big thanks to our sponsors, VTEX, eDesk, PagBank. VTEX is a global commerce platform enabling retailers, brands, and manufacturers to build scalable omni-channel shopping experiences. eDesk is a support, automation, and help desk solution for e-commerce, unifying messaging channels and helping teams manage customer service more efficiently. PagBank, or from PagSeguro, is a Brazilian fintech that offers payments, banking, POS, digital accounts, credit, combining financial services, support both merchants and consumers. And Airmeet, which is the platform we are using today, enabling interactive, virtual, and hybrid events, sponsor engagement, and a smooth session management. It's my honor to introduce you to today's expert, Jean Christian Mies. Jean brings over 2 decades of deep experience in payments, fintech, and international expansion. He was instrumental at Adyen, leading the Latin American operations. Under his leadership, the company established local acquiring relationships, built regional infrastructure, and expanded its presence across key Latin American markets. Before that, Jean held senior payments and operations roles in Europe and globally, including at Western Union and internet technology firms. After more than 10 years with Adyen in Latin America, Jean announced his decision to wrap up that chapter and explore new challenges. He's also taken on leadership roles in payment infrastructure firms. For example, he joined PP Pro as general manager for Latin America. And beyond operations, Jean has been active shaping regional industry initiatives, including in fraud, payments, and risk forums. So, Jean, thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to exploring your lessons on how to build world-class teams in fintech, especially in complex and fast-evolving markets. So, as you know, we always start with a controversial question. And the question for you today is, in fintech today, we often preach localization, hiring deeply embedded country teams, customizing product for every market, tailoring marketing, regulatory compliance. But isn't that sometimes the enemy of scale and global efficiency? At what point does hyper-local customization start becoming a drag rather than a differentiator? How do you draw the line?
Very good question. Thank you, Carlos, for having me. It's really a great pleasure to be part of this session, this group. So to your question, I believe, and I've learned over the years that I've been doing that globalization versus local teams is not so much a controversial question. It's an existential question, in my opinion, right? Because ultimately, you need to reap the benefits of both situations. Let's say the situation that you are a global expanding business, and that you are venturing into new markets by tapping into local resources, right? So, in my opinion, using local resources and expertise is a catalyst to any expanding business. And experience has shown many times that real globalization or expansion doesn't really work unless you're willing to embrace not only local culture, costumes, but also deeply understand the environment that you're venturing yourself as a company into, right? From a regulatory perspective, from a customer perspective, from a competition perspective, and so on. Like I said, you've seen many examples over the years of companies that have failed doing so. I think a great example is Walmart, this huge behemoth in global retail that failed miserably entering the German market, a market that has a huge consumer base, but they couldn't set foot there because they simply didn't properly plan their expansion into this market. And other examples are Google in South Korea. They failed miserably in South Korea because they didn't understand local culture. So, like I said, I think embracing local culture and the environment, the local environment, by hiring local expertise is a catalyst to your business, right? Because what I think companies need to do is they should set global standards, maybe from a perspective of from an aspirational aspect, right? So we are a huge company that has done great things like building, I don't know, technology infrastructure or building retail infrastructure. We've done that very successfully, and now we feel that it's time for us to expand. But we need to accept as a company that we're going to use the strength that we have and pair it with with whatever is needed in any geography that we intend to expand into, right? So ultimately there is no one size fits all. It's and companies that have tried to do that, like I said, have failed trying to press a model that works successfully in one market or in a region into other regions without really studying exactly what needs to be done in those new regions, right? So like I said, I think it's more of a catalyst than really a threat potentially to expansion.
Very, very good answer. So I just have a follow-up question, and Hendrik, please, bring it on as well. We'd love to have your takes on this. But I think in the warm-up session, I was just sharing. It's not a concern, but it's my curiosity, because what's happening with us at Evolve is that the members are now. Yesterday at our private session, one member said, "Okay, when are you gonna do like an international meetup for us?" Like, we are organizing stuff, but there's a certain demand now coming from the members to do more things, which is amazing. But then you need some structure. You can't be super rigid, but you need some structure as well, right? And I think the session today we're going to speak about building high performing teams. That's what we announced. But I think you cannot build high performing or high performance teams without understanding the local culture. So, Jean, you are someone who lived in Europe. So, and your heritage. Perhaps we can talk a little bit about your background. Not sure if you have international parents or come from an international family, but I think when we have the privilege of living abroad, I think it's a very humbling experience, right? Because you tend to see how the world is so big and you know nothing really, like and then you have a different a culture in Denmark, a culture in Brazil. I made a post about how my kids, they it's such a privilege. They are Danish and they have a Brazilian father, and so they get the nuances which a lot of people they don't get. They become like oftentimes like horses, like so in your experience, I think it's what I like to explore is your international background. I remember very, very much like Adyen in Brazil. There was a Dutch guy here, but you were the guy, you were the leaders. And I find that very, very interesting from a global expansion, like having perhaps a local person, but they're just like a guide of the culture or a master of the culture, but you're the one leading that. So I spoke a lot. Tell me a little bit about your background, your views
Yeah.
on having an international life to then leading companies in different markets.
Yeah, yeah, no. I can certainly feel the pain that you just described of growing up in a kind of a multicultural environment. So part of my family, so the half of my family is from Germany. So my father is from Germany. His family is from there. My mother's part of the family is from Colombia in Latin America. So it couldn't be more different one thing from the other, right, in terms of how the cultures express themselves. And of course, it was super interesting to grow up in such a culture where in Colombia you have very lively family meetings and a lot of partying and food and music, and in Brazil and in Germany you have a very sober and very discreet kind of family gatherings, right? But it's also interesting to it was interesting for me to find out that there's much more depth in growing up in such a multicultural environment than you initially think. Because I speak German fluently, I dare to say I speak without an accent. And when I lived in Europe and in Germany for such a long time, I still felt disconnected because although I spoke the language, I didn't kind of fully understand or grasp the culture and the day-to-day business of things, right? So it's always a challenge. Now, talking a little bit about how it was to kind of build Adyen in Latin America when I started the business here. I think I used a lot of, or many of the learnings, life learnings that I had over time, and applied them to the corporate world, if you will, right? So, first of all, Adyen decided to move to Latin America not because of a necessity, but rather because of an opportunity. So Adyen was very, very small back then. I think they had something around 20 to 30 people globally, and they were just about uh, expanding within Europe, going to France and other markets, from the Netherlands where they're based. And the opportunity back then was that one of their customers, I think it was one of the first international customers, provoked Adyen and said, "Hey, if you can help us to sort out, Latin America, uh, we'll work with you, right? So we'll expand our partnership." And in a way, Adyen was very opportunistic back then, and they said, "Okay, why not? Let's try." I mean, it's not the obvious choice for us. Go across the pond to a new region in Latin America, but back then, of course, they embraced the opportunity, and that was around the time when I was talking to them for the first time, and it was funny because since they didn't have any understanding of the Brazilian market, what I did in my first conversations, even before I started working for them, I presented a business case, right? I built a business case and said, okay, that's the scenario, that's what you're going to find, and these are the opportunities and the threats that you're going to face in a market like Latin America. Luckily, they bought the idea, right? So they bought my business plan and ended up hiring me for that. And over time, over the years, what I've always done is, like I said, kind of using the benefit of understanding better both cultures. So the European Dutch culture, what are their expectations? How do they work? What do they really want me to do there? With the expectations on the other side in Latin America from customers and potential partners of ours of what a company like Adyen should offer that would really make a difference in the market, right? And ultimately, I think it worked out pretty well, because there was this this vivid exchange of experience. We were talking about local expertise. I think without local expertise, it wouldn't have worked, right? Because then, a company like Adyen would have made the same mistake that so many others made to try to press a global standard into a market that operates in a different way.
Brilliant. Hendrik, go ahead.
So, what having worked myself at a Dutch-based business, one of the questions that I wanted to ask Jean today was the Dutch culture, and you work in a regulated sector like finance. How does that shape who you hire, but also how does that shape the goal setting to ensure that you deliver what you need to deliver on the the business plan that you created?
Yeah. I think one of the or a few really strong points about the Dutch culture, if I may generalize,
Okay.
are that it's a trust-based culture.
Mm-hmm.
So if people trust you, they'll trust you. They'll let you do whatever you think is necessary to be done, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't question so much. Other European cultures are much more inquisitive and much more skeptical, right? They will always cross-check again: is this really true what this guy is telling me or no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've experienced is that the Dutch, once they really trust you, they'll let you do what you think is necessary. At the same time, um, they're uh, um, let's put it that way, they're very reliable. So if so one kind of philosophy, let's say, that we always applied as a company, not only here in Latin America, but over the world, is we never oversell, we never overpromise.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are complexities in local markets like there were in Brazil, and we cannot solve them right from the start, we'll work towards solving them, and then we'll sell a solution that actually works, rather than, hey, we're going to have that in 6 months or a year from now. Trust us. No, that's not how it works. So, and I think this worked extremely well in a culture where Brazil, where so much overselling is typically done, right? It's all about closing the deal and doing the business. Again, I'm generalizing, right? But
Yeah.
this is quite common here. And if you find a business partner, a company that does not do that, and is honest about, hey, sorry, we don't have this, we're going
Yeah.
to work on it, and once we have it, we'll let you know, it's very refreshing, and it
Mm-hmm.
builds a very strong foundation, for this company to grow its business.
Um, and what was the gap that you found? What was the opportunity, Jean, that you found? Because the opportunity is I mean correlates to also the type of talent that you had to find, and then of course scale from. It
Yeah,
was a decade. So
yeah,
what was the opportunity back then that you identified
yeah.
in Brazil?
So I'll take a step back, and to talk a little bit about the vision that Adyen had and still has today, um, about what it set out to do. Right. So when I started the company, their vision was not a financial objective. It was not, we want to become a unicorn, we want to become a publicly traded company. It was about, we want to solve fundamental challenges that exist in the payment space and the banking space, right? Because we feel that the organizations that dominate this space today, still today actually, big banks typically, they're not innovative organizations. They don't know how to do that. They don't care too much about customer preferences and changing customer behaviors and payment patterns and so on. So we're going to fill this gap and set out to really revolutionize the payment space over the next years. And and this vision, of course, was created based on the European environment, which, if by comparison, in many ways was much more advanced technologically than
Yeah.
what you would typically find outside of Europe, right? Even in the US, for comparison. And in my conversations, first conversation with Adyen, this vision really intrigued me, because I said, hey, if they really are setting out to revolutionize or disrupt a whole industry with the technology stack that they're building, um, they might as well be very, very successful in markets that are even farther behind, 4 or 5 years behind in terms of technology. And this is actually what happened. This was a huge opportunity. So in this business case that I created, I analyzed exactly that. What is it what exists in Brazil and Mexico and Colombia and other markets here? And what is it what they are planning to bring into the market? And I saw this huge gap, and in this case, a huge opportunity, right? To accelerate digital adoption, financial inclusion, and all of that in Latin America.
So
Brilliant.
what you've just explained, John, is the opportunity that emerging markets offer on like both sides. It's not just, you know, uh, the normal situation of a region is behind. Talk to us about, as you said earlier, Adyen wasn't as small was a small company when it went into Latin America. Give us the kind of the in the business, the growth story about this business essentially also. So you're going into new markets, but also the business is growing, and as you you know becoming a, I wouldn't say unicorn because that word has become not great, but how do you balance a business, an international business growing and seeing a huge opportunity while going into new markets where potentially there's not as much opportunity immediately? How do you balance the global growth of the business versus, building a business in different countries in a market such as Latin America?
Yeah. Um, I think a very important aspect in this sense when you're planning to expand is that you need to have a long-term vision and you need to stick to the plan for the long run, right? So expanding is never an initiative that will bring results right from the start
Mm-hmm.
because it takes time, right? You need to adapt your technology many times. You need to hire local expertise. So you need to be in for the long run. And this was clearly the case at Adyen. So, like I said, they didn't have a short-term objective of financial sorts. They really had a long-term vision over 10, 15, 20 years of where they wanted to be at over time, right? And this,
Mm-hmm.
of course, uh, gave me the time to build the groundwork or to do the groundwork to make it grow over time and to kind of fit into to Adyen's global strategy more and more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, what of course helps and is what I said before. If you have the the advantages of holding a very strong, very evolved technology stack, and at the same time you have the opportunity to make decisions that are best for whatever region you're operating in terms of localization. In Brazil, we typically say tropicalization, and you get the vote of confidence to build the team that you need in order to accomplish that. Then things start falling into place. They start working, and actually much faster than I thought would be possible. Um, and and I think that when you do that, you have to act responsibly in the sense that you need to accept the fact that resources are limited. So it's not like I've received a blank check and they said, okay, spend whatever you need to spend to make it work. But I needed to be strategic in how I wanted to accomplish that in a certain amount of time. And what I did is starting with looking at what kind of resources do I need locally that are essential, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus resources that I could use from the central team, supporting functions that I didn't necessarily need from day one in Brazil. And what that translated into was, of course, I mean, if you want to start a business, you need to have an understanding of the opportunity in the market, the actual opportunity. What is the potential, the customer potential there? So let's go out and try to talk to companies and try to get their interest and potentially close some deals. And that, of course, comes with a risk, especially if you're not local, if you didn't build your solution locally. So you know that at some point you'll hit a brick wall and you'll have to adapt your solution or product or service to the local environment. But again, you have to take a risk, right? And this is pretty much what happened. So once I built a small commercial team of local experts coming from the industry that had their connections to the industry to start selling, we started getting real live responses, right? Feedback. Okay, this is great, but we need this and that to actually be able to work with you as a partner. And from there, we did exactly that. We started focusing on product and engineering, which was a huge vote of confidence, if you will, that I received very early on. Adyen did not have any international product or engineering teams. So what I proposed and suggested and was very stubborn about, maybe in a very German way, was, hey, if we want to make it successful, we need to have local engineering and product. So I got the vote of confidence. I hired the first product and engineering teams, started adjusting the proposition to local standards. And once this was done, then we could really start seeing the contracts coming in and the business picking up very, very significantly. And then just to finalize, once this was done, we started looking at, okay, so the next step will be to get to this growth rate and this TPV or GMV being processed. What is it what we need to be able to accomplish that? So little by little, building the team that you need instead of getting a structure from day one that you will not need, that will only slow you down, that will only create unnecessary overhead and so on.
Jean, looking back at this growth journey, and when you had to, let's say, hire your first your initial team, the team that helped you on that journey, what were the typical challenges that you would come across? Was it because the brand was unknown, or talent was super expensive? Because I envisioned the same, like when I'm telling you about Evolve and the local chapters, and then it's a lot of conversations and sharing, kind of like a dream as well, like a bigger vision, so to speak, but without overselling, having our feet on the ground. So tell us about that, some of the things that you come across, and how you also persuaded people to join your team.
Yeah. So there's a few elements to that. First of all, you're absolutely right, Carlos. It was really, really difficult to establish a payments company that had a strange name, that has strange company colors, that came from a strange, virtually unknown country, at least in Brazil, right? So a Dutch payments company with green colors called Adyen. You couldn't even pronounce the name here, right? It's still difficult today. So what we set out to do back then was, okay, instead of over-promising and telling potential customers how amazing we are, we're going to show them, right? And we're going to do that by building the necessary expertise and building the confidence that companies need to have in us through expertise. So we started engaging a lot in events or sharing content back then, about payments technology and asking provocative questions, right? How do you deal with this or that? Do you know how to, for instance, I don't know, back then a huge topic was around fraud. How do you control your chargeback rates? How do you, know how to tackle the problem? And we had solutions for that. So we would show how that actually works in our platform. Many times in meetings, we would open our live environment in front of the customer and say, hey, this is what you see in our platform. It actually works, right? So it was, really showing rather than talking about it, showing how the technology works. And little by little, we would, get the opportunity to, all right, let's try it. We'll integrate, we'll give you 1%, 5% of our business. You prove to me that it actually works. And like I said, with a very evolved and sound technology stack, chances were really high that it would work because, again, the benchmark was really, really low back then, right? But also a super important aspect, and Carlos, you asked me how I got people on board. Why would someone leave an established Brazilian player, bank, acquirer, or payments company to join a virtually unknown Dutch startup, right? And what played a huge role there is a topic that is extremely important to me is the emerging corporate culture that Adyen was able to build, right? Like I said before, it starts with a vision. You have to be able to convey a clear vision of what you want to accomplish as a company and what each person that is hired for this company, what role they will play, right, in making this vision happen. And like I said, it's not about financial objectives, it's about really a purpose-driven type of leadership that shows you a North Star, right? And Adyen still today does that extremely well. So when you sit in company events where the CEO steps up, it's never about the money or the revenue, the margins. It's always about, okay, so what's next? We accomplished this, so our next vision is this and that, and it's always tied to real world problems, right? And then, of course, what is super important is that Adyen is very, very concerned and very careful about how to get people on board and insert them into the company culture. So it's not like a motto that you see written on the wall. It's actually living the culture and actually experiencing what it means to work for such a company. Maybe that's a very unique thing, like Hendrik said before, but they do that really well. So to give an example, every person that is hired at Adyen, no matter where in the world, is invited to the headquarters in Amsterdam to actually experience what it is to work for this company, to meet people, to interact, to feel the vibe in the office. Every people at Adyen is invited at least once a year to this huge company event that they organize in the European summers. So it's really about, showing how it actually works. It's not about talking, oh yeah, so I work for a global company, that is based in Amsterdam, but I don't know actually how they work. No, it's quite the opposite, right? And this works extremely well. And to that point, especially here in Latin America, where people are generally very curious about other cultures, this helped me really to intrigue the people I was talking to and sell the vision and show that we actually meant it. when we started doing the business.
Very cool. Hendrik, question, and then I'll open the stage also for our members.
Gene, I think it would be wrong for me not to ask you the most obvious question, and that is, do you believe that every business in the world will become a fintech? Fintech is the fintech is the fintech. I keep reading. So what do you think so?
Well, not an easy answer to that. I think that what we've seen over the last decade or two is that, as a matter of fact, more and more companies from different segments aspired to become fintechs for obvious reasons, right? But at the same time, in the more recent years, you see a counterbalance, if you will, in terms of requirements for you for a company to become a fintech, right? I think we've seen a lot of evolution on the regulatory space, regulatory frameworks that many times are very much pro-business. I think in Europe, you've seen that over the years with the payment service directives that were issued in the 2000s, allowing more and more companies to actually become fintechs in a way or another, with open banking and all sorts of things. But like I said, I think today the regulators understood that there's also a huge risk, and we see that constantly in my part of the world, in Brazil, where just recently a huge money laundering scandal was detected by a bank that was sending money all over the world and was undetected by the central bank in Brazil. And although the Brazilian central bank is pretty good, they're actually pretty pro-business. I've been in meetings with them many times, and was really surprised about how much I felt that they really understand the market, rather than just sitting on their high chairs and setting rules. But nevertheless, it happens. And what I'm saying is that I think over time there will be more and more scrutiny from a regulatory perspective to limit the exposure, right? And this even gets amplified the more you venture yourself into the crypto space, right? So I tend to believe that there's always that there's always a good balance between opportunity and risk. And if you have a sound kind of a sound let's say opinion about things, you're able to kind of balance the risk and the opportunity by setting a framework that limits exposure, right? But that does not destroy opportunity as well at the same time. It's always a compromise, in my opinion.
Very good. Gustavo, maybe if we have people to join us, which I'm not sure, I cannot see here. I will have one question in the chat, but if they want to join in, they're very welcome. If you like to write, Gustavo, as well, because I can't see you, so I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so Vanessa sent a question. Let me just see. I'll show it on stage. So I'd like to hear Jean's thoughts on will AI bring a huge transformation in the payments and foster full credit access in the midterm? AI is bringing huge transformation in payments and fostering full credit, fostering access, credit access in the midterm. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the answer is AI already has a huge impact on the payments industry as we speak, right? And this is not something that has been created or has kind of appeared in the last year or two. It has appeared 10 years ago already, right? And when I speak out of my own experience, because the early indicators of AI were machine learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you would program computers to start, doing deeper analysis and based on data, help you in the decision-making process, right? And machine learning has been around for at least 10 years already, especially in the fraud prevention. So Adyen has tools that use machine learning, for a long, long time to minimize fraud exposure. So now with AI being way more advanced and way more, you know, holistic in the way how it analyzes data, this of course is growing exponentially, right? And it's not only reserved to to the real innovators in the market. It's becoming more and more broadly or widespread across the industry. Now, to the second part of the industry, if I understand correctly, the question was if AI will help to facilitate full credit in the midterm. So midterm, I'm assuming the next maybe 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe so. Yes, I do believe so. I think that AI, uh, you know, grows at a very, or it develops at a very, very strong or fast pace, right? So, if you will, it grows exponentially, really over time in terms of capabilities and the power of the types of analysis that are possible. If I look at what is possible today already, yes, I do believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, AI will be able to uh, to achieve a very, very high level of accuracy for banks or financial institutions or fintechs to base their decisions on, right?
Wow.
Gustavo, you want to ask? Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I have at least two questions, and the first one is you have worked with Adyen and some other huge companies and international companies, and also huge Brazilian companies with some international touch points, but mostly in Brazil. And now you're a consultant. My question would be: we talked about during this conversation about Adyen's culture. But what I wanted to ask is, having all of your experience, prior payments, and now, uh, what what do you think? Like, what's the does the culture of the company is a decisive decisive factor for for a company's success? Uh, I don't mind. Like, there are lots of types of cultures in each company.
Mm,
That's not my point. But does the culture of the company really drives if the company is going to be successful or not? And what is that? And in your case, how how can the company spread the culture across seas, let's say?
yeah,
Because for Adyen's example, you
yeah,
brought him to Brazil and other companies, and also companies spreading around. So
right. Yeah. So, in my opinion, and to your question, yes, I think that corporate culture defines whether companies succeed in the long term or if they fail in the long term, right? Um, uh, because of course, corporate culture is a very vague kind of concept. What does that actually mean?
mhm,
So there are different interpretations to that, right? But in the sense that I see or understand corporate culture, I think that it has a real impact. And I'm saying that because, well, first of all, like I mentioned before, it's a topic that that I'm very passionate about, because I lived it in a way that I had never lived it before. I never felt so connected to a company like I felt during those years working for Adyen. And I'm sure that there are many other companies out there that have a similar effect, right? So what I've done over the years is I try to understand more and more what is it what actually makes a difference. So I read a bunch of books about corporate culture. So many times the obvious ones like Simon Sinek, Start With Why, Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, Reed Hastings, No Rules, Rules, so the Netflix story, Exponential Organization, Salim Ismail's. And because I really wanted to understand what is it what defines corporate culture and why is it successful or not, right? And what I found, and I felt that was very interesting, was that all those scholars that write about corporate culture and all their, let's say, teachings that they tell about in their books, they have a common thread, in my opinion, that make it easier to understand what actually is corporate culture, right? Or a corporate culture that is that sets up a company to be successful. And the four elements that are the common threads are, the understanding of purpose or vision or a North Star that a company wants to convey, which means, like I said before, what is it what we want to solve, and what role will you play in accomplishing that as a employee of this company, as a member of this culture, right? So and what many companies that have done really well have in common is that they have, first of all, a very inspirational vision. Like I said, it's not about financial objectives. It's about solving fundamental issues that exist out there in any area that you want to choose. And the notion that financial success is a pure consequence and not a goal. So if the company, becomes a multi-billion-dollar company or does an IPO, it's a consequence and not a declared goal. The second common thread is how companies view decision making within their organization, which is part of the culture. And many times, companies that, or most of the times, I dare to say, that have become very successful have a very inclusive way of decision making. So decision making is not limited to the top layer or the CEO of the company. It's shared across many different areas and many different levels within the company. It's many times decentralized. So there are no centralized decision-making processes in a global organization, but in order for the company to scale faster, to eliminate red tape, they choose to decentralize decision-making, right? Of course, there's governance. Of course, there's strategic alignment. But if you want to grow and move fast, you need to decentralize. The third aspect is how they view talent. We've spoken about talent a little bit here, and the notion that and I've seen that happening as well. So a negative example, I've seen companies saying, "Hey, we launched this product. Now we need to hire 200 people to start selling it." Right? This is not how it works, in my opinion. So you need to hire for fit, right? So you start small, and then if there's a demand, then you start hiring and structuring the teams around it to make it happen. For that, of course, you need to have some discipline or patience as well, because many times it may take longer, but it avoids a fundamental problem of you building a structure that you won't need in the future, potentially not need, and create an overhead that you don't want to have. And on that same note around talent, and I'm just wrapping up, is hire successful companies, and that's my opinion based on those readings, right? They put more value on personality traits than on skills and qualifications. Skills and qualifications are replaceable. Personality and character is not replaceable, right? And companies, at least in my experience, at Adyen, they value that extremely much. So they want to know what type of person they're hiring, and build the skill set and qualifications that this person will need over time to be successful, right? So so in the Netflix No Rules books, Reed Hastings talks about the brilliant jerks, right? People who are really amazing rock stars, but are basically assholes, right? You don't want to hire brilliant jerks because their disruptive power is too big, and offsets the benefits that this person will bring. And last but not least, the fourth kind of common thread is how successful companies approach failure, right? And what is common among all of them is that failure is seen as part of the process. Failure is necessary for companies to grow, and it's more than anything else an opportunity to learn, right? Failure is part of the process. So yeah, so I think that's what I think defines a real company culture that engages employees and people and keeps them in a company.
Yeah, amazing. So you have touched the point of would be my following question, but we have not much time. So, and Adriana, please. I don't know if you know Jean, maybe.
Hi, yeah, Jean. Yeah, I don't have a question. I was just going to compliment on what he just said with a story that happened with me and Jean. That when I was working at Adyen with him, under him, and we had to decide whether we were going to invest a significant amount of money on developing an integration with a system that we didn't know whether we would use it or not, but there was a strategic client interested. And I mean, it was, and I mean, we needed to make the call. And Jean was very, I still remember this. He came up to me and said, "Look, if we can take the risk, if it doesn't happen, it's fine. I think we should make the investment." So I felt very reassured in the sense that I was able to, make that investment, and people had my back even if things went wrong. I don't think they did because I left before it solved, but and that's what he meant about trust, because when you have a bad company culture, everybody's trying to look for whoever is guilty of what, and trying to place blame, as they say. But when you build a trust company, I mean, you can take risks in you're much more comfortable in taking risks, and a lot of the times those are the ones that make a difference for the businesses. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I don't know if you remember that, John. Do you?
I do remember, yes.
Yeah.
All right, we are on 53 minutes. Thanks, Adriana. My daughters are right behind me, just so you guys know. The beauty of doing live sessions. Yeah, I perhaps just to wrap up the session, Jen. This has been amazing. But my question for you is more like you're in a career transition as well. I think there are a lot of learnings. We spoke a lot about Adyen, but also there were other companies that you work for, and now you're positioning yourself as a consultant advisor, and your role there is to support companies primarily, or I would say that your USP, or your advantage there is to help them tap into the Latin American market. So perhaps if you could just comment on that, and what's the opportunity that you see for emerging fintech or e-com businesses, marketplaces? Your views on why Latin America, why now? What's the opportunity?
Yeah. There, you're right. Thank you, Carlos. So what I'm doing right now is strategic consultancy for, well, not only for fintech companies, for tech companies, and many times also retail companies that are in a growth phase, right? So I'm specifically advising companies that that they want to grow exponentially at increased rates over the next years. And so what I'm advising companies on is not only the whole go-to-market, how do I set about entering new regions in Latin America or elsewhere? What is it? What's the playbook, right? To be able to accomplish that, and how do I succeed in building a long-term growth strategy, right? And I feel, and the reason why I've done that or decided to provide that kind of consultancy is because many times companies that are in a growth stage are still very short-sighted in terms of what I need to prepare for beyond getting to the next target that I want to achieve, right? So how do I make it become really sustainable over the years, right? And that's why I'm saying that's super important is don't focus on the money, right? If you're doing your job well, money will come, right? You'll be rewarded for that. But be patient and and stick to the plan over the long term. And what I think is still the case today in a market like Latin America or any other developing markets is the amount of opportunities that you see. Because on one hand, you have let's take Brazil as an example, a market that is very innovative by nature, right? So, for instance, also from a consumer perspective, technology adoption is very, very high. Financial inclusion, especially in the last few years, has increased a lot. But in many senses, there's a disparity in service level, maturity of technology, especially when you think about situations that are typical in Brazil, like fraud, expanded fraud, or a very huge threat here, or need for credit and loans and cash flow, actually, either to operate a company or to run your personal life, right? And these problems, they can be solved today with technology, and many companies outside of Brazil still have the technology that is required to close certain gaps or to minimize certain gaps in a short period of time. This is why I decided to look outwards, look at company outside of the region, to seize the opportunity that exists in the developing markets here.
Fantastic, brilliant. Hendrik, do you have any remarks to close this session?
So one, it's very clear that John is very, very passionate about understanding business culture and success, which for me is fascinating in the sense that I've not yet heard anybody communicate that is as succinctly as he has done. But I think for me, the takeaway continues to remain is that our community contains so many brilliant humans that have seen and done things that are only really understood when they talk about it. And I think for me, the biggest learning today is that we should be wanting to connect more with folks in the community because there's so much to learn. But I think June, in his last answer, kind of gave me the final, like, I wouldn't say approval, but the final, like, confirmation that I think the next 3 to 5 years is a full-out battle by global businesses to win in Brazil. And it's not going to change because what he described is what everybody wants. And yeah, it for me, it's really interesting to understand that, and I said this in our warm-up call, is that I don't think people understand the importance of financial inclusion and financial solutions in emerging markets to grow the opportunity for all. I must say, as I said, I think this is one of the most interesting conversations I've heard about fintech in a while. It's most probably biased because I'm hosting the event, but yes, thanks a lot, John, for sharing your views and for communicating how you think about success, because I do think most of us who have worked long-term at businesses, we want to understand this, but we also look back that, man, I wish I knew this, that, or the other.
Thank you, Hendrik. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. And Jan, for whoever's watching, I mean, on our community, people can always reach out on WhatsApp. But whoever is watching this session on LinkedIn, what's the best way to get in touch? If you're a fintech, if you're ecom tech business, and they want to know more about you.
Perfect. Great.
What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, by email. So my company is called Bright Edge Consulting. So you can go on the website. You can contact me over there or through the community. Carlos.
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll make that happen. So I'll put that in the show notes. So, all right. So Jean, thanks very much. This was amazing. I second Hendrik's words, so make them mine as well. Thanks for your views, man, and it's great to have you with us in the club. All right.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.